Sandy Spring Bank. I'm joined here by Beth Golding, Remax Advantage, and we are going to be chatting a little bit here today about some general Q&A about home buying and some different questions that you might have. Touching a bunch of different topics here. I answer some questions for you. So.
Awesome. Yes, looks like everything is doing its thing in the background and uploading and live streaming and all of those things. So I hope we're really live everywhere.
We
Well,
are
thanks.
live, baby.
Live, baby. So thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And we're going to get started with some people's questions. I'm going to click this little link over here. So what this is going to do is it's going to show that link for people that they can click at the bottom. So if you click at the bottom, it's going to bring you into our little audience here and you can give us some questions in the chat. So you can send us some live questions. In the meantime, we've compiled some questions from future, past, current clients and just other people that have reached out that have had some questions. So we're going to get started with that right now. Okay. So first question is for you, Kevin. It's how does using buy now, pay later services impact my credit and more importantly, my debt to income ratio when applying for a mortgage?
Yeah, so a timely question. You may have seen some news today about Klarna and Afterpay, Affirm, and all sorts of different new services that are out there that allow you to make a purchase for a wide range of items and finance it over time, short period of time, long period of time. These services can certainly be useful, if it's a purchase you need to make and you don't necessarily have the cash right away to pay for everything. But we do pick them up, and it's part of the loan process because more than likely they're on your bank statements, which we look at, as part of your pre-approval. And any sort of payment plan, payment arrangement, we have to count that into your debt to income ratio, unless we can show that you've paid it off since then or fulfilled the payment terms. So I have had situations, unfortunately, where we've had to, count $600 concert tickets, right? We had to count that in the debt to income ratio, something that normally wouldn't come up. You can finance a burrito from Chipotle these days with this stuff. So it's kind of crazy what you can do these days. But we do definitely have to document the terms of the payment arrangement. If it's something that you're still paying on, $50 a month or $100 a month or whatever it is, it can get included in your debt to income ratio, and it can help hurt you from qualifying for a loan. So again, not to say that you shouldn't ever use these services, but it's something if you are looking to get pre-approved, you definitely want to think about and consider and talk to your mortgage banker to see if it's something that's going to impact your terms.
Yeah, and I would say, what a lot of people don't think about because, like you said, it's like, $50, $10, whatever. Like when you get traditional credit, you have like a $500 credit line and you're, spending maybe $100 a month in gas on it. You're utilizing a very small amount of what you're borrowing. But when you do this buy now, pay later services, they're not giving you a line of credit. They're literally financing one thing that's 100% maxed out,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it's a set payment each month. So it's just like an installment loan. It is an installment loan. So
Yeah.
it's a little different than if you use a credit line and you use a couple $100, but your minimum payment is $25 a month, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's truly an installment loan.
Yeah. So you see, buy now, pay later, you're getting credit and it's going to affect your credit score whether you're trying to buy a house or not. Yep.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna hit the next one. So next question's also for you. What's the difference between being pre-qualified and being pre-approved? Which gives buyers more leverage? Which gives buyers more leverage in a competitive spring market like we're in right now?
Yeah, busy market, busy time of year, and being pre-approved is another step past just being pre-qualified for a loan. So pre-approval is definitely what your realtor is going to look for in terms of a buyer representation, and it's also going to be what the seller's agent is going to look for when they're considering the terms of your offer to make sure that you actually have been vetted and that you're good to go. So pre-qualified basically is maybe a phone conversation. Oh, I make X amount per year. I have $10,000 in the bank. What do I qualify for? I give you a rough payment, rough amount needed for closing, that sort of thing. Oh, my credit's 700. Sure. Okay, great. So it's more of an informal type of application. Maybe we get a pay stub, maybe we get a bank statement from you. and that's a pre-qualification. Pre-approval, we're having these conversations. We're doing at least a soft check on your credit, if not a full inquiry. We're getting those bank statements for the last 2 months. We're getting your W-2s for the last 2 years. We're probably running an automated underwriting software to confirm that you're good to go. So pre-approval is definitely a little bit extra due diligence up front, but it pays off in the long run because sellers in a competitive market, they want to make sure that you've been reviewed, your file's been reviewed, and if they accept your offer, that they're going to get to closing on time, right? And not, oh, well, I didn't really check, to see how much they made or how much. So this actually doesn't work, 2 months down, 2 weeks down the road. So, yeah, pre-approval is what you're going to want to do, and it's never too early to have these conversations, whether it's a pre-qualification or a pre-approval. Even if you think, hey, I'm not really ready to buy something for 6 months. Well, hey, I just had somebody who said that, and they saw a house they liked, and we had to scramble to get everything in order to get the offer within a couple days, right? So even if you think you're down the road, it's never too early to have those conversations to get the ball rolling.
Absolutely. And I would say, the difference is in the details, right? So, I mean, not to, toot our own horns, but when we work together, I make sure that, I get to clue you in to everything that we do. You're copied with the listing agent, you're calling the listing agent, so when you do these little things, it also makes these home buyers and the whole team that we're working with, like, we're on top of it and we're getting things done. So that's just like one more thing that really helps out our buyers, especially in a multiple offer situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what's one credit myth that holds people back from even starting the home buyer process, would you say?
A big one is that you got to have a perfect credit score, right? Or at least have a 700 credit score or a 740 or any of those numbers, right? There are all sorts of loan products out there, conventional FHA, VA, USDA loans, portfolio loans, right? And the credit score myth that you have to have a perfect score to qualify for a home is just not true. You can have scores oftentimes down even to the high 500s and get qualified for a loan. Now, that's not to say that that's necessarily the ideal credit score. Obviously, if your score is a little higher into the sixes or sevens, you have more options available to you, or slightly better terms, when you're getting pre-approved. But just because you maybe have you know, a small collection on your credit, or you have a credit card that's close to the limit, does not mean that you shouldn't at least have a conversation with a lender to get checked out. We can give you recommendations to help fix your score. Typically, those don't cost you anything. There's no obligation to move forward with us. If you do that, we're happy to provide those recommendations. So don't let a credit score hold you back from having that first conversation, because we can give you the tools to put you in the right spot.
I
So.
think that's awesome. Very good. Are there any new or updated loan programs that spring that offer low or no down payment or even help with closing costs?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for our own bank, Sandy Spring, where we have essentially 100% financing option, where we can help fund your down payment for you, which, as a first-time home buyer, typically the minimum down payment requirement is 3% of the sale price. So we can help you with that. There are different grants available, whether you're looking in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, even outside of Maryland, but at the state level as well, federal grants also. But that can help, again, provide down payment, closing cost assistance. I work with lots of first-time home buyers. It's very common that most first-time home buyers don't have 20% of the sale price saved up, right? And you don't
Right.
need 20%, another kind of urban legend myth, if you will. Multitude of options out there that will help lower your out of pocket. I am familiar with just about all of them. As I mentioned, I work with tons of first time home buyers. So there are different loan products, grants, incentives to help ease that burden for you. So happy to have a conversation about that and see what you might qualify for.
Awesome. So, how about cosign debt or a car loan? Can something like that stop someone from qualifying for a mortgage, even if they have good income and good credit and all of those things?
It is a possibility because, yes, you could have great credit, you could have good income, you could have the assets, but we all always are going to look at your debt to income ratio, right, as part of the loan approval, meaning how much do you bring in each month on a gross amount, before taxes, deductions, withholdings, et cetera. versus how much are your monthly obligations. So your car loan, your student loan, your prospective house payment, any credit cards that you might have. So you could have a 800 credit score, and 20% down in the bank. But if you have payments exceeding 50% of your gross monthly income that are co-signed on for somebody else, even if you're not making those payments, that can impact your approval. With that said, there are certainly ways to get around that. If you truly are a co-signer for someone who's making their own payments, you can exclude the payment as long as you can show that that person's been making the payments on the car loan for typically 10, 12 months. So you can get around that. But if you are chipping in on the payments for somebody too, and you're, oh, I'll help you out, that's usually doesn't work if that's on your credit. So if again, just think about, not to say that you shouldn't do it. Obviously, everyone has people that they want to help out, family, friends, etc. But if you are looking to get pre-approved and somebody's asking you to co-sign for them on a loan, talk to a mortgage lender. Say, hey, is this going to impact me if I do this? Will it hurt my score? Will it hurt my debt to income ratio? And we can give you some guidance on that as well.
Yeah, and most of the time the answer to that question is yes, right? It's going to affect your credit, whether you're, looking to buy a house, looking to buy a car, looking to get a loan. Being a co-signer is going to show up on your credit report just as if that credit was yours, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, now it looks like it's a question for me.
Yeah. So moving on to some just buyer red flags to kind of consider from a realtor perspective, right? So, Beth, what kind of red flags would buyers look for to avoid any sort of rent to own scams? Rent to own, of course, meaning signing a contract to rent with the seller saying, "I will sell you the house down the road."
Yeah, and this is a very good thing that, a lot of people look at, when they're not ready to purchase a home yet and they can't, either can't afford it or can't get a loan yet. And rent to own sounds wonderful. So there's a few things that you need to keep in mind with rent to own. So one of the things is that, you are agreeing up front. So today, if I was like, hey, Kevin, you have this house, I want to rent to own it, let's talk about it. And we enter into a contract today for a future value. So, for instance, or a future sales price. So, if I'm telling you that I'm going to buy your house in a year for X amount of dollars, say that house appreciates, then, the seller is going to be in a bad position where they're going to be leaving money on the table. And if the value of the house goes down over a year's time, then as a home buyer, first of all, I'm not going to be able to buy your house because I'm not going to be able to get a loan for the full sales price amount. So, with the future sales price, that could certainly change over time. So that's one of the negatives because you are in a contract of sale. Another negative can be if I'm your buyer and I have a rent to own. Typically, there's a rental portion which goes to the owner, and then there's a portion of that rental amount that actually goes towards saving up for my down payment on the house that the owner keeps aside in a separate account. If I don't buy your house in a year, that money is actually at risk of being lost. So there's just a couple of things. Another thing is, the contract and other things that can be in there. Is it legal? Is it legit? Can the owner make you sign a contract and not be on the up and up and potentially try to take your money or try to get you to sign off on unfavorable terms if a realtor's not involved or if a lawyer or attorney's not involved and there's just these papers that are drafted up? Where did they come from? Who put them together? So, there's a lot of unfortunate scams out there with rent to own. Some of the advice that I give my rent to own people that inquire on that is, are you in a rental now? Are you looking at, moving into another rental that you potentially may want to purchase? Asking that owner up front, do you want to potentially sell this when a year's up? And another question might be, if you want to sell that when a year's up, and, can we put down something that where, in a year when it's up, can I have that option to purchase your home before you sell it on the market? So, a couple good questions. Of course, just err on the side of caution. If you are unsure, it's best to get a real estate professional involved.
Awesome.
Okay. Next
So
question. Yeah. How can buyers verify that a seller or investor offering creative financing options is legitimate?
yeah, I mean, I would say it can be a little tricky, right? But it's important to have a good agent that you're working with, right? That kind of understands what's being offered, if that's a real possibility. An agent like Beth obviously has plenty of experience, I'm sure, working with, seller financing for buyers and different things that are out there. And then of course, as a lender, we'd be looking at different things with, the terms that are being offered as well. So again, it's more so just being in communication, making sure that your lender and your realtor are on the same page, understand what's being offered. There's certainly are motivated sellers out there, right? They know that they not everyone's holding out for the highest and best 10th off or whatnot. So there are things out there that can be benefit to a home buyer. But again, just having a good team around you between the lender and the realtor to verify and trust with the seller, have that communication with the seller to confirm everything's legitimate and that you're not, again, signing up for something that you don't understand or isn't actually as beneficial as it sounds.
Absolutely. All right. So we have one that's very, very timely and that we've been getting, especially with these interest rates increasing. So, should a buyer wait for the interest rates to drop, or is now still a smart time to act, even with today's rates? What do you say, Kevin?
Oh, the $1 million question, right?
Yes.
So I can tell you, ever since 2020 and 2021, when we had our run of 2-3% rates, right? Everyone's been kind of fingers crossed that we get somewhere back close there. Of course, it's not you can't just wave a magic wand and get rates back to where they were. Obviously, there were some consequences with inflation that happened because of that. And so we've been kind of sitting on these same rates for almost 3 years now, where we're at right now. So you can look at charts. Home appreciation in those 3 years, even though rates have been relatively in the 6 to 7% range, home appreciation has not slowed down at all. Home prices are still going up. So of course, not to say, you know, these rates are going down tomorrow or you should wait, 6 months or anything like that. There's no right or wrong time to buy. It's whenever you're ready to buy, right? But, I would say it's not really worth it to just wait and hope for maybe 5% rate because those are probably a good ways off still. So, you just got to get creative, work with the lender and find a house that's comfortable for you to afford and, comfortable monthly payment. And then if rates do go down the road, you can always refinance and get your payment down. But your home is going to build equity in that time once you own it. So more than likely.
Absolutely. And what I've been telling everybody too is once those rates drop some, will they ever be in the twos and threes in our lifetime? Who knows? But once they start to drop, what's going to happen is people are going to get off that fence, right? So we're going to have home sellers that have been sitting on their house, that have been waiting for that interest rate to drop. So what's going to happen is, there's going to be more sellers. There's going to be more demand that's going to be met, which is going to be nice. But when that happens, it's going to equal that market out a little bit. So when it equals that market out a little bit, this high appreciation of homes is probably going to drop some. It's not going to be a crash, nothing like that's going to happen. But when that does happen, you may lose a little bit of appreciation. So my suggestion is always to, sell the house, get that extra appreciation, that extra equity in your house, put a higher down payment down on your next house. So even though the interest rates are a little bit higher, the bank is collecting interest on less of a loan. So you're still making out there as far as that's concerned. So very good and timely information for these home buyers and so home sellers that are going to purchase another home.
Yeah, and just one other quick thing on that.
Hmm.
Sellers have been waiting for rates to come down too. And they haven't really. So you're
I know.
starting to see some sellers like, you can't all just stay in your home forever. People have to move, people have job changes. So we are, I would say, Beth, but I would say we are seeing inventory pick up a little bit because people don't have, the luxury, not everybody has the luxury to sit on their 3% rate forever, right? So
Absolutely.
inventory, you might be able to find a diamond in the rough right now, with a seller that needs to move or what have you. So,
Right.
um,
And I mean,
you
some of
know,
those loans are assumable, right? So, I mean, if I'm
Hmm.
a home seller and I'm sitting on a lot of extra equity and I want to sell my house, the house I'm buying, if I can actually bridge that gap for them and actually put the amount of money down to meet their mortgage amount, between their mortgage amount and the actual, purchase price, then I could potentially assume their loan and still keep their interest rate. So, definitely lots of choices in this market. So, let's see. Okay, I think the next one, let's see. Oh no, this is a good one. Okay. Um, this is for you. What's a common mistake buyers make during the loan process that could delay closing?
Well, I'll give you a couple real quick. One big one is job change, right? So that's not to say that you can't change jobs at all during the loan process, but if you change jobs to a different type of industry, different type of pay structure from salary to hourly, or to commission employee or something like that, that is an obstacle that we have to overcome, right? So again, I always tell folks to let me know if they're considering any sort of job change, because again, it's not a game breaker if you do it, but we just have to do it the right way so that it doesn't interrupt the process of getting you approved. When you're, especially if you're halfway through, your contract time, right? So if we can get an offer letter from the new place and it confirms you're going to make this amount and you're salaried, typically that's going to be fine. It's not going to hold things up. But some people will either change jobs or maybe a week or so before closing, oh hey, I'm good to go, quit their job, and say, because I've been trying to get out of this job for forever. Now that I got my house, I can go do what I want. So don't do that, of course. But job changing and or leaving your job is a big one. And again, we can work with you on that, as long as you bring it to our attention in advance, and you can let you know, hey, maybe if you can get them to push this offer date off for a couple weeks before you go to closing, great. Or if you can get the offer signed, before closing and everything looks good the way it's worded, that's fine too. I've just closed a loan for somebody who was starting in February for somebody who was starting at their job in May. So it's very doable as long as the terms are correct. The language is what the underwriter likes to see, and so yeah, they actually just started their job, I think, like a week or so ago, for closing in the end of February. So it's definitely doable, but just let us know.
Yeah, and I think those are some great examples, but I guess in short, right before settlement, there's another credit check and there's another verification of employment, right? So
Yep.
those are the two things. So, right, don't buy furniture right before settlement. If you have to buy a car or something that's essential, talk to your loan officer, look at them as your financial advisor while you're under contract. If you have any questions, if you're doing anything different, if you're spending a large amount of money or if something comes up, just reach out to your loan officer. They should be able to guide you on that.
Yeah, every lender does credit monitoring throughout the entire process once you're under contract. So even if you have an inquiry, we're going to see it and we're going to ask, hey, did you open up any new credit? Right. And ideally the answer is no. But if it's yes, then we just have to document it. And again, that's just, you got to bring it to our attention.
That's right. Okay, I think the next question's for me.
Yeah. So, Beth, what advice would you have for a home buyer that just falls in love with a house? Got to have the house, but they haven't been pre-approved yet.
I would tell them not to do it. Don't fall in love with a house before you get pre-approved. I would
Yep.
say don't fall in love with a house. I would say don't fall in love with a house like until, after you get your home inspection and after you get through inspection negotiations, after you get your loan commitment, because those are all little processes as we go throughout. And unfortunately, sometimes things fall through as a result of that. So, but yeah, so definitely get pre-approved first, as a rule. And like you said, so pre-qualification is you're pretty much taking people's words for it, right? And then pre-approved is let's get all that documentation to, validate all the information that the home buyer has given you. So definitely get pre-approved, reach out to a loan officer, interview loan officers, interview realtors, and then and then get that process started. Once you do that, I mean, you know what your monthly payment's going to be on the next house. You just have all of your ducks in a row. If you qualify for any grant programs, you're going to get that information up front. So just having that information, how much money am I going to need at settlement? You can have perfect credit, perfect income, good to go there, and then just have no money saved up or not have enough money saved up. So it just answers all of those very important questions before you start looking at houses, because then you're going to fall in love, and then we're going to go back to Kevin and be like, hey, I know that we're pre-qualified, can you pre-approve us now? They look at your documentation and something needs work, can't do it now, you might need to wait a long time, like anything is possible. So that's where we start. Kevin and I will sit down with you via, like, in person via Zoom. We've done appointments together just to make home buyers feel good and safe, that they're well taken care of. You can see a face of somebody that you're working with, not just a link in an email that says get pre-approved. So when you work with us, you're going to get the full support. You're going to get everything together working with us to we're going to be on your side. So
Definitely.
all right, we got
It's our
another.
job to make sure you're comfortable. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we like to do. It's a long process, and we want to definitely make people feel comfortable.
yeah, and then just to follow up on that, so you bought your first home, right? And you need more space, or you want to move up to, a slightly bigger home, or you're moving, right? How can you buy your second home before you sell your current home? A lot of times you're going to need to use maybe the money from the house, right, to pay for it, or the moving timing doesn't work out, et cetera, et cetera. So how can you do that without, having to have two loans at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a traditional way of doing it where, if I sat down with a seller, I would say there's a few different ways that you can do it. Let's go through each choice in the process. But unfortunately, right now, considering the market that we're in, especially right here, and we talk about the market that we're in, we're talking about this, Maryland market, Baltimore market, and then all the surrounding counties. And, just the inventory is super low. So almost every single house that's listed properly, listed at the right price, we're going to have multiple offers, and it's going to be a little bit of a battle. So when that happens, you can't have a home sale contingency and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want to buy your house, but I own one and it's not listed yet, but I'm ready to list it. And as soon as we go under contract, I'm going to list my house and go under contract, and I'm going to have a contingency for it. And when you do that, and if there's three offers out there, I have a house to sell and two other people don't, unfortunately, as a home seller, they're looking out for their own interest, and it's a less risk buyer if they don't have a home to sell. So unfortunately, home sale contingencies haven't been flying. They haven't been flying for a long time, but right now they're really not flying. So the other way to do that is with a bridge loan. So you're tapping into your own equity to purchase your next home. And I'm going to have you talk a little bit more about the logistics on that, on the lending side. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So bridge loans are just, they're a fairly common product, especially when in the scenarios that Beth's describing, where you can access the equity from the home that you're leaving, right, and have a temporary, usually 6-month or 12-month interest only loan, typically, that will then pay off when your house sells, right? So you can get the money out of your existing house, use it for a down payment on the new house, and then you sell your old house, it closes out, that loan, right? So the drawbacks to that, which, there's typically a cost involved with that, right? Because it is a short-term loan, bank's lending money on that they'll probably get paid back on quickly. So, but it is a product that works. Other thing you could do if you have the equity in the home, you could always get a home equity line, right? A revolving line of credit on the house that you could draw from to have that money already ready to go, so that you could go ahead and use that for a down payment on the next house. So there's definitely some creative products out there that can help you with that. And then once you sell that, again, sell your current house, that gets paid off. So just, there are products out there for that option. So again, we can certainly have conversations about those.
Yeah, and I would say lastly, also, there's also seller rent back. So if I'm a home seller, I'm going to put my house on
Right.
the market, I'm going to get it under contract, I'm going to sell it, and then I'm going to ask the new buyer for, 30, 60, 90 days after,
Right.
the house settles, in order to actually, you know, move, sell the house, do everything, buy my next house, everything that I need. So then you're actually buying the house after, but you're actually renting your own house back in order to
Hmm.
do that. So there are a few different ways to do it. But definitely, unfortunately, that home sale contingency has not been flying. So we're at 12:30. I'm gonna wrap it up, but I'm just gonna go into real quick the top three tips for selling your home in a spring market, considering that it's so competitive right now. I would say first of all, the first conversation that I like to have with home sellers is, what's your next move? What's your plans? Have you gotten pre-qualified? Because one thing that some people don't realize is, as a home seller, I can talk to you, Kevin, and I can say, hey, look, this is my deal, this is my credit, this is my debt, blah blah blah, check my credit, and here's my house. I've already talked to my real estate agent. She said I can get X for it, and she's also told me that the money that I'm going to be walking away with approximately is X. So then, you can take that information and you can actually not count my current loan against me, and you can
Right.
use that equity, and you can say, look, if you put X money down on your next house, I can even say, look, Kevin, my next house, I want this one house in this one neighborhood, and right now they're selling for 300,000. So you can take all of my information, not count my current loan against me, and you can say, okay, Beth, if you have sold your house, let's pretend you sold your house. Let's pretend you have this $30,000 in the bank. We're going to look at what it would be when you purchase your next home. So you're going to take that $30,000, you're going to put it down, or 15,000 or whatever it may be, and this is what your scenario is going to be. So as a home seller, I need to know whether my move is realistic or not before I even think about selling my house. So that's usually my first step. So you want to do that, and then you also want to talk to a stager. I always recommend talking to a stager, and I know it's a little bit of an added extra expense. Even in this hot market where properties are moving, you're going to get more interest, you're going to get in the multiple offers, and your price is going to escalate more if you talk to that stager, for sure. And then, definitely make sure you interview your lender and make sure you interview your real estate agent, so you have the appropriate people in place that can guide you from day one. So those are my top three tips when you're selling a home in the spring market. And I'd like to thank you, Kevin, for joining me today on my very first streaming live on all the places. So thank you if you've joined us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. So once we get off, I'm gonna see if everything worked properly, right? Yep. Yep. And then we'll get everything out. We'll get some, reels out, some replays out. So we're gonna be able to get all of this wonderful information out to everybody. Thanks again for joining me today, Kevin.
Yeah. Thanks, Beth, for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Looking forward to the next one.
All right. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Have a good one.